In a spot in the ocean between Florida and Puerto Rico called Bermuda, you should be more worried than usual. Over the course of 5 whole centuries, more than 50 ships and 20 planes have completely disappeared within it. Hundreds of people have evaporated without any wreckage, without distress calls, and without a single trace. Imagine with me, we've landed rovers on Mars. We've mapped the depths and the oceans. We've cracked the human genetic code. But this watery triangle, which officially doesn't exist on government maps, is still raising questions without clear answers. Welcome. Today, we're not just going to make a list of scattered incidents. We're going to dive into the depths of the story, the history, the myths, the science, and the real numbers behind the most famous mystery in history. Because, between us, the truth is that the Bermuda Triangle has an answer, and its answer is logical and quite surprising. But to get to the answer, we have to go back in time to the beginning. The very distant beginning. First, where are the borders of Bermuda, and to whom do they belong? Before we go any further, let's get the basics straight. Even the definition of the Bermuda Triangle itself is flexible and strange. Draw a line from Miami to the island of Bermuda, then from there to Puerto Rico, and bring the line back to Miami. That's the triangle in question. But wait a second, no one agrees on its actual borders. Estimates of its area range between 500,000 square miles and 1.5 million square miles. A difference of 1 million square miles is, in itself, a huge margin of error in any serious scientific research. The U.S. Navy doesn't recognize anything called the Bermuda Triangle as an official region. The U.S. Board on Geographic Names doesn't acknowledge its existence in its records. Even the giant London-based marine insurance company, Lloyd's, doesn't charge higher insurance premiums for ships that pass through it. In fact, they charge higher premiums for other areas known for actual danger, like the North Atlantic in winter. So, if official institutions don't see it, how did the whole world become obsessed with it? To understand, we have to go back to a man who was on a ship in the year 1492. He noticed something strange in the Atlantic Ocean. That man was Christopher Columbus. He was sailing west from Spain, looking for a new route to Asia. He touched upon the area we call the Bermuda Triangle today in his logs, which were later written down and translated. Columbus described strange things on September 13, 1492. He noticed that the compass needle started behaving strangely and was no longer pointing accurately to true north. A few days later, he wrote that the sea rose into large waves without any clear wind to explain it. And even stranger than that, he described a small light on the horizon flickering like a candle, appearing and disappearing in moments. Imagine yourself at his place in the year 1400. You are sailing in waters that no one has known before you. There is no GPS system. There are no satellites. There is no weather forecast. And on top of all that, your compass is giving strange readings. These weren't just simple problems. They were unsettling incidents that shook the ship's crew and planted the first seed of a legend that would take centuries to grow and spread. Today, we know that the strange light Columbus saw was likely the phenomenon of bioluminescence, or the light of bioluminescent marine organisms that produce natural light in the water. And a disturbance in the compass also has a precise scientific explanation that we will explain in a little while. At the time, Columbus continued on his way and recorded the observations without exaggeration. The Ellen Austin incident. How does an ordinary voyage turn into a legend? Let's move forward a few centuries in time, and the stories started to pile up like stones. In 1881, a cargo ship named the Ellen Austin was traveling from Liverpool to New York through the Sargasso Sea. It is a sea located in the heart of the Bermuda Triangle, known for its calmness and dense seaweed. The circulating story says that the crew saw a ship sailing calmly without any sailors on board. the captain sent some of his men to sail it to New York. A sudden storm blew up, and the two ships were separated. When the weather calmed down, they went back and found it empty, and the new sailors had vanished. They sent a second crew, the fog rolled in, and the ship disappeared forever. An interesting story, right? The only problem with it is that when you check the official shipping records for the Lewis Company for 1881, you discover that the Ellen Austin's voyage was completely calm and normal. No ghost ships, no missing sailors, and no recorded delays. The story grew and evolved from all the retelling and exaggerations over decades of cheap tabloid journalism. This contradiction between the exciting story and the documented, realistic account is the true essence of many Bermuda Triangle tales. But dismissing everything and claiming all the stories are lies is also wrong, because some things that happened in this area were very real and horribly tragic. The USS Cyclops, the greatest naval mystery in U.S. Navy history, in March 1918. During the days of World War I, a massive cargo ship belonging to the U.S. Navy named the USS Cyclops, over 160 meters long, set sail. With 309 people on board, and loaded with 10,000 tons of manganese ore. It departed from Rio de Janeiro heading towards Baltimore. It made an unscheduled stop in Barbados, and then continued its journey north. And suddenly, it completely vanished from any contact or tracking. To this day, the disappearance of the Cyclops is considered the single largest loss of life in U.S. naval history, in an event unrelated to any military combat. The U.S. President at the time, Woodrow Wilson, said a poignant sentence, "Only God and the sea know what happened to this great ship." The story didn't stop there. In 1941, two ships of the same Cyclops class, named Proteus and Nereus, disappeared on almost the same shipping route, and without any clear explanation. 3 giant ships, hundreds of people, and not a single piece of wreckage was ever found. Naturally, these incidents were perfect fodder for conspiracy theories, but military historians and maritime researchers have a much more realistic explanation. The Cyclops was loaded beyond its allowed capacity. Its engines were in poor condition, and it was logged with recurring mechanical failures before its final voyage, and it was sailing through an area known for its rapid weather fluctuations. A sudden storm, combined with an overloaded cargo and a failing engine, would cause a heavy metal ship to capsize and sink in a matter of minutes. Ships that sink that quickly don't even have time to send out a distress signal. There is a real, officially documented incident in the U.S. Coast Guard records that is worth mentioning because it is one of the few that has actually remained partially mysterious. In 1921, they found a sailing ship named the Carroll A. Deering, aground on a reef near North Carolina. The entire crew was missing, but the food was still set on the table, as if the sailors had left the ship suddenly in the middle of their work. The official investigation at the time ruled out the mysterious portal theory and pointed to 2 realistic possibilities: either a pirate attack on board the ship due to its cargo of sugar, or an internal mutiny among the crew that led them to abandon the ship in lifeboats, which later sank in a storm. The file remained officially open, but without any supernatural element, and it is a documented source in the U.S. Coast Guard archives. Flight 19, the moment that gave birth to the global legend. If the Cyclops planted the first seed of fear, the event that took place in 1945 is what etched the name of the Bermuda Triangle into the minds of all humanity. On December 5, 1945, 5 Avenger torpedo bomber aircraft from the U.S. Navy took off from a base in Florida on a routine training patrol. The flight was known as Flight 19, with 14 pilots on board. The flight leader was Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a decorated, veteran pilot and there was no reason to suspect that anything would go wrong. About 90 minutes after takeoff, Taylor's compass began giving unexpected readings. He believed he had gone off course and was over the Florida Keys. He contacted the control tower and said his famous line, "We don't know exactly where we are." Over the next 2 hours, the situation went from bad to worse. Taylor was convinced he was heading west, not east, meaning he was heading deeper and deeper into the Atlantic Ocean. Instead of heading back toward the Florida mainland, radio communication started to break up and become garbled, and the weather deteriorated significantly, with strong winds and high waves documented in the meteorological records for that day. The last message received from them was, "It's like we're entering white water. We are completely lost." The 5 planes went down in the ocean after they completely ran out of fuel. And that same night, a Mariner rescue plane with 13 people on board took off to search for them. It disappeared as well, and no one was able to find any trace of it. The official Navy investigation at the time wrote a report stating that the planes disappeared as if they had flown to Mars. A phrase that is more literary than it is a scientific conclusion, and unfortunately, it spread more than the actual analysis. When experts analyzed the recordings and data later, they discovered something completely different. Lieutenant Taylor had a documented history of navigation errors and getting lost in the sky during previous missions. On that day, he wasn't over the Florida Keys. He was east of the Bahamas. As for the Mariner rescue plane, it is known by the nickname the flying gas tank, due to fuel vapor leaks that caused sudden mid-air explosions. Witnesses on a nearby ship spotted a flash of an explosion and oil slicks at the same time it disappeared. Human error combined with stress, bad weather, loss of signal, and a known technical defect in that aircraft model led to a chain of consecutive errors that ended in tragedy. But of course, the phrase "a pilot got lost in bad weather" will never be as exciting to the media as 5 planes evaporated into thin air. And this is exactly where the legend started to grow and turn into a scientific phenomenon, to the point where they linked it to aliens and the lost continent of Atlantis. How did isolated incidents turn into a global legend? So how did a subject that happens anywhere in the world turn into the greatest mystery of the 20th century? The answer is in 2 words: media and commerce. Before 1950, there was no such thing as the Bermuda Triangle in the collective consciousness. People would hear about individual ship and plane accidents, feel sad for the victims, and move on with their lives. But in 1950, a journalist named Edward Jones wrote a short article for the Associated Press in which he collected a group of separate incidents that happened in the same maritime area. And for the first time, he hinted that there was a strange connection between them. 2 years later, journalist George Sand wrote a broader article in Fate magazine, where he focused more on the idea of the Cursed Region. In 1964, a writer named Vincent Gaddis came along and wrote a famous article in a pulp magazine. And he was the one who officially coined and chose the name Bermuda Triangle, describing it as the Devil's Triangle. The article achieved incredible sales, and people were quickly drawn to the idea. The real peak happened in 1974, when a writer named Charles Berlitz released a book titled The Bermuda Triangle. This book sold more than 20 million copies around the world and was translated into dozens of languages. Berlitz wasn't writing a scientific or historical research paper. He was writing a straightforward thriller novel with the sole purpose of making sales. What exactly did Berlitz do? He took every incident, old or new. He took the exaggerated stories. He ignored official reports and expert testimony. And in some cases, he invented details of his own. For example, if a ship sank because of a storm documented in weather reports, Berlitz would write that it disappeared in clear weather and a sea as calm as a mirror, and if a plane was lost due to pilot error, He would write that the pilot contacted the tower and said they were entering another dimension. This type of deliberate distortion is what built the modern legend of the Bermuda Triangle. From that point on, various theories started flying in from everywhere. The lost continent of Atlantis and its energy crystals, underwater alien bases, time portals, and miniature black holes. Very entertaining theories in movies and TV shows, but when we get down to reality and put science under the microscope, nature and physics have much deeper and more accurate answers than these myths. For real explanations answer these questions, let's break down the science point by point and see what's actually happening in this spot of the ocean. This isn't just any waterway. First, the Gulf Stream is normal. It is a giant, fast-moving marine river that flows through the Atlantic Ocean like a highway, and its speed sometimes reaches more than 9 kilometers per hour. And its width can reach up to 100 kilometers in certain places. Imagine a small ship or a plane that crashed into the water and left behind debris. The Gulf Stream grabs this debris and drags it hundreds of kilometers away from the crash site in just a few hours. When rescue teams come a day or two later to search the original reported location, they don't find anything that proves anything. And new investigators conclude that the wreckage evaporated, while in reality, the wreckage just moved outside the initial search area. Secondly, rogue waves. Scientists used to think that stories of giant rogue waves were just myths from old sailors' tales. But with the development of radar and satellites, the existence of these waves was officially proven. The first documented scientific measurement was in 1995 at the Disappearance platform in Norway, with a height that reached 26 meters. These are savage walls of water that appear suddenly and without warning, and their height can exceed 30 meters. A single wave is enough to break a cargo ship in half and sink it in a matter of seconds before the crew can even press the distress button. And the Bermuda Triangle region, due to the meeting of strong ocean currents and changing winds, is an ideal environment for these waves to form. Third, the magnetic deviation of the compass. Researcher Larry Kusch, in his famous research, showed that the Bermuda Triangle is one of the very few places on Earth where magnetic north and true north intersect on almost the same line, a phenomenon called zero deviation, meaning a regular compass could give a misleading reading to an inexperienced pilot or sailor. And if he doesn't know how to calculate the difference accurately, he will be convinced that he is on the right path, while in reality, he is drifting hundreds of kilometers off his true course. Fourth, the methane gas myth. Many people have heard theories about huge pockets of methane hydrate gas under the seabed in the triangle, and that it explodes, causing the water density to drop suddenly, which makes ships sink, or that the gas rises into the atmosphere and disables the engines of actual aircraft. This explanation has been clearly distorted by the media. Originally, researchers at a Norwegian university discovered giant craters on the seabed of the Barents Sea in Norway, caused by ancient methane gas explosions dating back thousands of years, which are not currently active. The media grabbed the news and immediately applied it to the Bermuda Triangle, to the point that the Norwegian researchers had to issue an official statement saying that their research was in the Northern Hemisphere in Norway and had absolutely nothing to do with the Bermuda Triangle. And there is no evidence of any active methane explosion in Bermuda that caused ships to sink. Fifth, tropical storms and sudden weather changes. The Bermuda Triangle area lies in the path of the Atlantic hurricane season from June to November. And these hurricanes can form and intensify in just a few hours, especially before the era of satellites, which we use today for early forecasting. A ship or plane that set off in calm weather in the morning could find itself in the middle of a full-blown storm by the afternoon without any prior warning. So, science gives us clear and comprehensive reasons. Dry currents, giant waves, magnetic deviation, flash hurricanes, and on top of all that, natural human navigation errors. Numbers don't lie, dear viewer. Larry Kush's 1975 investigation. A researcher and librarian from Arizona named Larry Kush did something very simple, but with a huge impact. Instead of just copying stories from books and magazines as they were, he went and conducted direct investigations from the original sources. He contacted the U.S. Coast Guard, international insurance companies, old newspaper archives, and the Civil Aviation Authority. The result Kush reached shocked everyone, and he published it in his book, The Bermuda Triangle Mystery Solved. First, he discovered that the number of accidents in the Bermuda Triangle, compared to its massive size and the density of its maritime traffic, is not at all higher than any other busy maritime region in the world. Second, he discovered that most of the writers who promoted the mystery were hiding essential information. For example, they would mention that a ship disappeared in sunny and calm weather, but when you check the official weather report for that same day, you discover that the area was actually being hit by a Category 5 hurricane. See the level of lying? Third, many of the accidents they attributed to the Bermuda Triangle actually happened thousands of kilometers outside the triangle's borders to begin with. But the writers would deliberately cram them inside it just to make the list more sensational. What do modern institutions say today? In 2013, the Worldwide Fund for Nature conducted a massive study on global shipping lanes to identify the most dangerous maritime areas for navigation. The list included areas like the South China Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, the North Sea, and the British Isles region. As for the Bermuda Triangle, it wasn't even among the 20 most dangerous areas in the world. Imagine that. The U.S. Coast Guard clearly states on its official website that it does not recognize the Bermuda Triangle as a particularly dangerous area, and there are no statistics confirming that the rate of ship and aircraft disappearances there is higher than in any other spot in the oceans. Well, you might ask yourself a logical question. If the area is normal, why do so many accidents happen there specifically? The answer in one word: traffic density. The Bermuda Triangle area is one of the most congested and traveled regions in the world. It has massive commercial shipping lanes between North America, South America, and Europe. It has thousands of daily flights. It has thousands of yachts, fishing boats, and tourist vessels that set out daily from the shores of Florida and the Bahamas. In simple math, if you have a street where dozens of cars pass by daily, and there's one accident a year, and another street where 1 million cars pass by daily, and there are 50 accidents a year, which street is actually more dangerous? The first street, of course, because the accident rate relative to the number of cars is much higher. And that is exactly what is happening in the Bermuda Triangle. The massive amount of traffic makes accidents a normal occurrence, and statistically expected. In fact, the rate is considered excellent and very safe compared to the actual volume of traffic. Why do we still believe the myth? So why do we still hear about the Bermuda Triangle to this day after all this evidence? The reason goes back to a psychological phenomenon we call confirmation bias. It's linked to another phenomenon called apophenia. The human brain is programmed to look for patterns and connect events together, even if there is no real connection. When you hear that a ship sank in the South Pacific, you just scroll past the news and don't care much. But when you hear that a small yacht sank near Florida or Bermuda, your brain immediately connects it to the old story you heard a long time ago and tells itself, see, this is the triangle. It's back to swallowing victims. Whereas if the same incident happened somewhere else, you wouldn't have connected it to anything else. The media plays on this chord because excitement brings views and reads. and engagement brings advertising revenue. And this isn't anything new. From the days of the 1950s articles to today, in the age of social media, the same mechanism is being used. The bottom line is, the raw, bare truth is that the Bermuda Triangle is not a supernatural mystery. Nor does it as stargates, or aliens, or lost continents. The Bermuda Triangle is just a beautiful, open stretch of the Atlantic Ocean, where nature can be treacherous at times, with strong currents, fierce waves, and sudden storms. And millions of people pass through it every year by land, sea, and air. When harsh nature meets typical human error, tragedy happens quite simply and anywhere on the face of the earth. Not just here. The real secret of the Bermuda Triangle wasn't at the bottom of the ocean. The secret was inside our own minds. It's our love for mystery, our passion for the fear that controls it, and our constant desire for there to be secrets greater than our understanding of this world. We are the ones who created the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. The next time you board a plane or a ship and pass over this area, look out the window. Enjoy the beauty of the blue water and the sun, and smile.